interesting is that you can look at how a word is used in context. That's the thing that is always going to be the most obvious use of a corpus, and Jonathan has suggested to me that I use his preferred example, which is good. So I'm going to use good. So the nice thing about good is that it pops up and you get lots of examples, nearly 3,000, and you have a number of different pragmatic implications of how it's modifying things. Jonathan, jump in if I say something stupid. So I don't think we have any examples here where it's not an adjective obvious on the screen, but there are some, and we'll come to that in a moment. Here it's largely modifying a noun. So you've got things like good moral, good amendment, good names, good government. Now the interesting thing is that in some of these cases, good actually has what you might refer to as, serious content in terms of semantics that it's conveying. So if we look here, restore yourselves into the good thoughts of the world again, right? Good is actually, having, it's important to the meaning of what thoughts are being talked about. In other places, you have examples where it's basically, essentially, it's just there for politeness. Again, Jonathan, I'm probably not using politeness in the right way there. If you look at something like, now, my good sweet honey lord, ride with us tomorrow. Well, good sweet honey lord, the good there is, it's not really adding anything, is it? It's just making the flattery a bit more intense, which, although it's obviously a related meaning, it's a distinct usage. And as you go through, you see more and more examples of that general sort. Now, one of the interesting things that CQP Web lets you do, so that's the linguistic analysis. I was only doing a little tiny wee bit of that just to show that it can be done. Now I'm going to go back to showing off technical stuff. The nice thing about CQP Web is that it lets you present information embedded in the corpus within the concordance. So if we take a look here, it says 1H4 prints in green italics. Now that's just how I've set up the utterance labels to appear, or the line labels, speaker labels. So that's not actually a word in the corpus at all, right? It's not part of the data. It isn't counted up in the frequency lists that we use to set up the Encyclopedia Volume 1, but it is part of the markup, part of these enhancements that we've added to the corpus, and so you can see it there to see who's talking. So what it's set up so that every time the character speaking changes, you get one of these little things in there to show you who's talking at a given point. And if I click here to the extended context display, I can actually manage to lay it out more or less as you would expect. Sometimes the line breaks go a bit askew relative to what you would see in a published Shakespeare, but it's mostly quite similar. And you can see the name of the character. The reason that the names of the character are prefixed by the abbreviation of the play that they're in is because some character names or character abbreviations are duplicated. King, for instance. Lots of characters have a character, lots of plays have a character called King in them. So you can do that. You've also got, oops, where's my mouse? There it is. So if I go back now, maybe it's just a bit bigger. You also have the ability to choose various follow-up analyses here, such as collocations and distribution. The one that's interesting for use with good is the frequency breakdown, which allows you to see how many different forms there are. Now, because we searched for the word good, we only actually found that precise form. And for that reason, there's only one thing here. But if we oh dear, I didn't mean to go back then. There we are. If we switch it to showing us the frequency breakdown of annotation, then it shows us all the different parts of speech that good can have. and you can see that it's overwhelmingly an adjective, somewhat rarer and more rarely a noun, and only once an adverb. According to who, you may ask? According to me, because I'm the one who went through every word. Although actually looking at that one, it might change my mind now. I might consider that an adjective. I'm not sure anymore. So there you are, you get the, so this is from the Tempest, one example tagged as an adverb there. Let's have a look at some of the nouns. So, for my good, for our good, for the public good, for your good. What good is this to England? Now, note that there you've got the same meaning effectively, meaning benefit, but two different phraseologies, right? A phraseology with a kind of explicit dative preposition phrase there at the end to say whose benefit it is, and a phraseology where it's for personal pronoun, possessive pronoun rather, good. So you've got different phraseologies. But you also, and those you might actually have expected from contemporary English, but you've also got to every good, which is, again, it's the same meaning, but it's a different phraseology. Every good here, opposite to every good means against benefit to everyone, any benefit that you might imagine. That's roughly right, isn't it? Roughly? It'll do for now. So yeah, so you get lots of interesting things coming out like this. Collocations I'll just show really quickly, and the only reason I'm showing it at all is because it's one of the sources of evidence that is used quite a lot when we're in the working on the actual lexicography of it. Yeah, sorry, these conditions are too stringent. I need to make them less stringent to replicate what we actually do in practice. There we go. So there you can see the things that collocate, that is statistically co-occur most often in these particular conditions. I won't go into all the statistics, but you can click through and see what's going on here. So this is quite interesting. You've got 3 instances of pronoun countries good, 2 in Richard III, 1 in Coriolanus. So that's evidence that it's something that is, you know, not being used for the occasion, but it's an expression that Shakespeare felt free to draw on in, you know, entirely different works. That suggests it's probably an expression that existed in the speech community. There's good and evil. This is interesting. You've got good against evil, good or evil, good and evil. Again, variation in the phraseology. Other things that CQP Web can do that are quite good fun involve subcorpora, which is where we define a particular set of texts, and we say, let's have a look at these texts and compare them to some other texts. So within Shakespeare, the best division known is comedies, histories, tragedies. Oh, come on, I was trying to press shift then. Say tragedies. Let's have a look at the tragedies. And let us select all the plays that are tragedies by using the genre categories down here to select it, and we create a subcorpus. And so now we've got, this is all stuff that I've done in the past. Now we've got my tragedies as a subcorpus. We can ask for the frequency list of that to be compiled, which always takes a while because it's a lot of data crunching. Yep, done. And then we can use it for keywords. So if I want, I can say, show me the keywords in my tragedies, my selected 12 tragedies, and compare it to the rest of the corpus, so everything else, so comedies and histories in this case. And you can look at word forms, you can look at tags, you can look at lemmas. In this case, we're going to look at tagged lemmas because that's what we use to group words for the actual Encyclopedia of Language itself. And what we can do is we can do a keywords analysis, which those of you who are linguists will know about. Typically, with any kind of work involving fiction in any sense, you will tend to get character names when you do comparisons of one to the other. So you can ignore those, but if you look past the character names, you can start to see words which are either more or less frequent relatively speaking, in the tragedies. So the tragedies really avoid the word count. Grey here means it's avoided in the tragedies. Blue here means it's preferred in the tragedies. They also avoid sovereign. I don't think that's probably not a matter of avoiding, it's probably more a matter of the histories using it a lot. French doesn't come up much in the tragedies, and 10 times less than it does in the others. Shepherd comes up way less, about 10 times less. So you can start to see contrasts between different segments of the data really quickly in this way. How am I doing for time? Have I got like 5 more minutes?
Nice.
Yeah. Right, so the other thing that I'm going to show you at this point is something that I'm afraid we haven't released today. Instead, what we've got is certain tools which we've used in the process of creating the corpus. And what they do is they sit in front of this data that I've been showing you in the CQP web interface and present you with a slightly friendlier way of actually accessing it. And the two main ones that I want to show you are here, the character tool and the play tool. And here I have to credit, where's Amelia? There you are, I knew I'd seen you. Amelia Joulanger at the back there was the one who did most of the programming for these two things. And they are, if you look at the play tool, and like I said, this is not publicly accessible yet, but we hope to make it so soon. It's a really quick way to pick out either the 3 main categories or a single particular play and compare it to everything other than itself. So you can compare it to its inverted self. So we're comparing Hamlet here to everything other than Hamlet. And that, you see, the skin it's put on CQP Web means you can go straight to this. This is a keywords analysis again, so it's showing you what's particularly common in the play Hamlet as opposed to other plays of Shakespeare's. And you can see lots of character names at the top, but if we go down a bit, you can start to see things like player, not a surprise, lunacy. Now, note that there's 3 examples in Hamlet and 3 examples elsewhere, but because that's 3 in one play as opposed to 3 in 35 plays, it's a big difference. And the statistics is all done by the keywords mechanism for you. So all that works out. Ooh, skull. What do you bet? That's the Yorick scene. But let's click through. Yeah, Act 5, Scene 1, that's what this shows over here, where it says text Ham 5.1. So we've got 7 examples of skull all clustered together. So all kinds of things in there that are really quite interesting again. So that's the play tool. The character tool does much the same thing for characters. So let's look at Hamlet as opposed to other characters this time. So let's pick Hamlet. There we go. And the characters, there's Hamlet himself. The star just means that this is a character who says a lot, because not all characters do. And once we get that, we again have the ability to look straight to the keywords. So this is Hamlet's speech versus everyone else's speech. Hamlet seems to like the word excellent. And play and player and mother and Horatio. This is kind of, you might be thinking, well, yeah, that's kind of obvious, but it's nice when there are some items near the top of the list that are exactly what you'd expect, because it gives you some confidence that if you see something you didn't expect, that you're actually looking at a real phenomenon. Could is quite interesting there. Hamlet's seen as an introspective waverer, I believe. I'm probably going to get several Shakespearean scholars mugging me outside now because of having said that, but it's as close as I can get to it. So if Hamlet's an introspective waverer, then the fact that he says could around 4 times as frequently as the other characters in Hamlet might well reflect that. And so, you can do all of those kinds of analyses, but the other thing is that the character tool also allows you to access some other interesting information. So you can see, for example, where different characters talk in the play. And the interesting thing that you see here is that Hamlet, although he's the title and main character, there are 2 big lacuna where he's not there at all, he's not talking, the action is with other people. One is there at the start of Act 2, and then another end of Act 4, start of Act 5. Again, if you've studied Hamlet, I would guess you probably know that, but the point is, if you didn't know that, you know it very quickly now from that. You can also see which characters are in the same scene as Hamlet, and how many times that happens. So this is showing, for example, for Marcellus, it's saying there are 3 scenes that have both Hamlet and Marcellus in them. 1, 2, 1, 4, and 1, 5. And we can also see mentions of the characters' names. So who's talking about Hamlet? So these are the people in whose speech the name Hamlet occurs. So we have Horatio, Claudius, Gertrude. This is not terribly interesting, of course, because when it's the main character, you can guess that most of the other characters are probably going to mention him a bit. But it can be interesting if it's perhaps not, the central character of a tragedy. That's it. I'll stop there. Is that about?
Thank you.
I do have one.